I think of leadership as the ability to create a vision for a group of people and then help them rally around that vision and achieve something as a group. So it's the ability to motivate people toward the achievement of that vision and help remove obstacles and keep everybody going in the same direction. Yale Law School was really a very important part of my journey because it was the place where I first met a group of people who challenged my thinking and taught me how to become a storyteller, really. So being able to persuade a group of people who are critical thinkers about a particular idea, whether it was in the context of advocacy, like in moot court, or just in a section or in a brief. It's the ability to synthesize a lot of new information and then develop a point of view, tell a story about it to get people to follow you. And I think even though that's often applied in a courtroom, it's actually the same process for raising money from investors, convincing employees to come to your company, signing up your first clients. Ultimately, building your business is about learning a bunch of new information and then ultimately telling a story about where it's heading and getting people excited about that story. Yeah, I mean, I think obstacle-wise, I was a brass ring chaser when I came to Yale Law School. I was very risk-averse, looking to just tick the box on the most prestigious thing. I viewed sort of transferred prestige from institutions, so going to this college and this law school. When I showed up, I was very interested in kind of, being associated with the great institution, and that meant carrying forward in the approved course of action. So whether it was law review or working in appellate in the summer, or just trying to go down that path. And I think that was an obstacle for me as an entrepreneur, and it required me to sort of mature through that process to where I could go off the beaten path, have enough innate self-confidence to do that, do something that was riskier or more risk-seeking or disruptive, not live in a city that most of my fellow classmates lived in. I think I had to kind of learn to step out of that mindset a little bit. I think part of my mindset led me to be quite a kind of competitive person in law school, where I think the way I showed up in group settings was not always the best for just building rapport with a group or having a constructive conversation. It was more achievement and goal oriented. And I think if I had more self-awareness about how I show up in groups, or what how to listen, for instance, instead of always trying to wait for someone to stop talking so I could start making my brilliant point, I would tell myself that that is actually a more important skill than learning about the law, or even than the achievement that I was shooting for and thought was so important. When I came to Yale Law School, I thought about all the things that the best students at Yale Law School did. So that to me meant, you were doing the prestigious clinics with the best professors, you were joining the law journal, you were working on moot court, you were spending a summer doing appellate work, you were then preparing to clerk, and then a clerk on the Supreme Court if possible. So I kind of bought into the whole Hunger Games mentality around some of these scarce resources that people think are the most prestigious. And I made decisions really with that in mind while I was here. And so that meant I went to Washington, D.C., I worked for one of the approved 10 law firms. I did everything right, if you will. I clerked for the Second Circuit. I was fortunate enough to clerk for Justice Souter at the Supreme Court, which was what I thought was going to open every door to my career and just make me happy for the rest of my life. I never really continued the dream beyond the Supreme Court. I just knew that was something really neat, and you'd make a bunch of money in a bonus if you did that, and then you could work at any law firm and the world was your oyster. End. Well, I actually did that, got to the end, and then I had a couple things happen. First, I realized, wow, I have to practice law in some format. I can't just continue to chase these prestigious brass rings. So what am I going to do now that I'm done with the Supreme Court? Because I don't actually want to be in appellate law. I don't actually want to be a law professor. I don't actually want to work at the Office of Legal Counsel or the Justice Department. I'm kind of stuck. And I realized this while I was at the Supreme Court. And I decided that I needed to do something different that appealed to the part of the law that I liked the most, which was storytelling and public speaking. So I thought, I'm going to give it a shot as a trial lawyer, because I'd had a good experience at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So I thought, I'll go be a trial lawyer. I did. I practiced law as a trial lawyer. I got to try cases all around the world. And what I quickly realized, though, is that I began to gravitate toward building the law practice more than practicing the law practice. So the actual process of pitching my business, marketing, the creation of an international arbitration practice at a law firm was more interesting to me. Traveling to a conference and convincing someone to sign up with our firm was more interesting than writing the 200-page brief for the actual arbitration after I had been successful winning the business. So that started to bother me, realizing that, man, I love storytelling and I love persuasion and I love setting a vision and leading, but I don't necessarily love research and writing and the kind of closing the door and being more monastic in the analytical sides of the law were isolating. And I felt the need to do something that was more creative, more right-brained. And that led me to resign my law partnership at age 32. As an entrepreneur in technology, failure and crisis is not like a once a career thing, it's like a once a week thing. So, when I started the company, we were hit with a $500 million class action lawsuit relating to our use of text messages. Turns out we weren't doing anything wrong, but it was terrifying. And going through that, you sort of say, well, it was fun while it lasted, that's it. And you go home and you say, we're all gonna die, to your wife. And she goes, oh man, that sounds really serious. After the 15th time you've said that to her, she says, yeah, you say this all the time. And so you learn from the fact that you kind of somehow survived the last crisis that the first thing you have to do is take a breath and manage your own emotional escalation and spiraling so that you can present a calm, reasoned approach to the rest of the team. But having gone through it a few times, I've learned a few things. First, figure out how to manage your own emotions, take a breath, trust that you will find a way through it. Second, normalize and validate other people who are feeling panicked. Part of being in a transparent organization is you're sharing information. People think they want a transparency, but then it's scary when bad things happen, and so people are gripping. So how do you normalize and validate that? You don't try and talk them out of that. You just say, if you're feeling this way, it's completely reasonable. I'm feeling that way. That's normal. So you normalize it, validate it, and then give people a sense that it's going to be blameless. So if there's a postmortem, if the crisis is in some way our fault, we're not going to start descending into finger pointing. We're going to do a blameless postmortem and figure out where we go from here and what we learn from it. And then sometimes it's some bolt out of the blue thing like, I don't know, a global pandemic, and you band together with the other people in your community that are facing the same crisis. I would start by going back in your mind to everything you've ever done and figure out when you were happiest. Then from that, figure out what professional worlds let you do that all the time. Then I think try to understand what the functions are in a business. So in law school, you're sort of thinking, well, I could go to a law firm or I could do public interest, government, public interest law. Well, there's a whole broader world than that. What do people do at companies? Well, I don't want to go in-house. I didn't say you had to go in-house. What do people do at companies? Forget the fact that you happen to have a JD right now. That's a broader training that can allow you to do a lot of things. So that's the advice I would give them, is try to see beyond just the panic of, oh, my colleague says this is an approved thing to do. I've got to go to one of these law firms. Try to sit with their puzzlement as you do something unconventional, like explore opportunities in the Mountain West, for example, or ask yourself what's going to make you happy, what kind of community are you going to want to live in, and then tap into the incredible network of this place.